Kruger, Borderlands, late morning. A young dog lies curled against another, unmoving. The second body is stiff at the belly and jaw, its side darkened by dust and time. Flies hover, landing without protest. The pup beside it does not move. Only the tremble of breath marks it as alive. One soft whine escapes, not sharp, not loud, just a thread of sound pulled tight from inside. It does not rise to greet the vehicle. It does not flinch when the door opens. It is not waiting for help. It is waiting for something that isn't coming back. The heat carries stillness across the dry clearing. Pale scrub grass sways lightly. A ranger named Elias approaches, stopping several meters from the pair. He crouches low, hand extended but resting on his knee, speaking so softly the words are barely carried. "Just stay, little one." The pup's ears twitch, but it does not turn. Its muzzle stays pressed to the side of the other, as if heat could still be traded. The fur of the dead pup is thinner, ribs sharper. The shape is almost identical, but the difference between them has widened beyond reach. Elias glances back at the others. No tags, no collar, no mother in sight. Likely abandoned weeks ago, or born to a stray already lost. At this age, the siblings would have stayed close, relying entirely on each other to survive. But now, only one is breathing, and even that seems uncertain. The pup shifts slightly, drawing its front legs under its chest. The movement is clumsy, unsteady. Its rear legs stay limp, either too tired or too weak to lift. Its eyes flicker, the kind of slow blink that signals more than sleep. Dehydration is visible at the gums. The coat around its neck is matted with burrs, and one ear is torn at the edge. Elias knows the signs. One more day in this heat, and there would be two bodies here. He sets down a shallow dish of water at a distance, then backs away. The scent will travel. Time must do the rest. Approaching too fast could frighten the pup into flight, and flight now would kill it. If it runs, it dies. If it stays, there's a chance. 10 minutes pass. Then 15. The pup's head lifts, eyes blinking toward the scent, but it does not move. Instead, it leans once more into the body beside it, resting fully now as if asking permission. There is no answer. Only then does it push forward, belly low to the ground, dragging itself toward the dish. Every step is labored. Its ribs flex with each breath. When it reaches the edge, it does not drink right away. It only stares. The water reflects the sky. For a moment, it seems unsure what to do. Then, its tongue touches the surface. Slow, measured, 2 laps, then 5. Then it stops, looking back. Its chest rises once, sharply, a dry hiccup or a broken sound. Elias breathes out. "You're still fighting." From this distance, nothing more can be done. Intervening now would risk pushing the pup back into retreat. The next hour will determine everything, if its body can handle the water, if it finds the will to eat, if the heat doesn't steal the strength before help can return. Elias kneels in the shade nearby, watching. Behind him, one ranger marks the coordinates, another prepares a carrier, but they wait. Everything waits. A single pup, a quiet dish of water, a lifeless body cooling in the dust, and the soft, steady rhythm of breath, not gone yet. The clearing held its stillness into early afternoon. The surviving pup had not returned to the water dish, though it rested nearer now, chest pressed to the dirt, chin between its paws. The breeze passed through without stirring the body beside it. Nothing moved except the pup's throat, tight and trembling, each breath shallow, each exhale ending in a sound not quite whimper, not quite call. It was low, repetitive, and constant, a soft rhythm like a pulse, laid over dust. The rangers remained back at the vehicle, watching in silence. The pup wasn't drinking. It wasn't walking away. It had simply curled close to the body again and begun that sound. Every few minutes it would lift its head, scan the dry grass, then settle again into stillness. It did not howl, it did not bark, but the noise it made carried far, small but stretched. Trekker Joe stood by the passenger door, arms folded across his chest. "That's not just grief," he said quietly. "He's calling." Elias didn't answer. He was listening, not just to the pup, but to the stillness around it. No birds nearby, no insects over the grass. Even the wind had hushed, as if drawn in by the cry. Something about it made the skin on his neck tighten. The sound wasn't hopeful. I wasn't afraid. It was something older, something in the bones. The pup cried again. Same rhythm, same breath. The body beside it had cooled completely now. One leg stretched awkwardly across a tuft of grass, unmoving. The flies no longer came. But the pup stayed, refusing to break that link. Its body curled inward, its muzzle pressed into the hollow beneath the sibling's jaw. When it cried now, the sound vibrated through both of them, alive and not. Joe moved slowly to the edge of the clearing, crouching behind a thorn bush. His field book stayed closed. His eyes never left the pup. "He's doing what he was taught," he said, almost inaudible. "When they get lost, they call. When they're cold, they cry. He doesn't understand why no one's answering." For a moment, no one spoke. The breeze stirred again, light over the grass. Elias stepped down from the vehicle, moving no closer than Joe had. He watched the pup lift its head again. The cry came. Then silence. Then again. The pause between each sound was exact, as if the pup were waiting, listening. Far off, too far to see, something answered. A crack of brush, a flick of motion in the line of trees. Joe turned his head slowly. "Did you hear that?" Elias nodded once. Nothing followed, no reply, no second movement. The pup didn't react. It cried again, the same sound, now thinning at the edges. Its strength was fraying, its breaths are shorter, but the rhythm held. If the call brought help, it needed to happen soon. The pup's body wouldn't last another day without food. If it kept using its strength to cry, it would fail before nightfall. If they moved in now, it might flee. If they waited, it might collapse. "If he stops crying," Joe said, "we've lost him." The sound came again, not from the pup, from the trees. Just a shift, a shape, then stillness. The pup's head tilted, another breath, another cry. By the time the sun leaned westward, the pup had stopped crying. Not because the grief had passed, but because exhaustion had overtaken everything else. It lay stretched beside the sibling's body again, chest barely rising, eyes half closed. The flies had returned in small, drowsy spirals. A hush hung over the clearing, but the air was thick with something unspoken. Joe moved first, cautiously. Not toward the pup, but around the outer rim of the clearing. His boots left deep prints in the loosened dust. He stayed low, scanning the ground, his gaze narrowed. After a minute, he paused. "Elias," he called softly, not looking up. Elias joined him where the soil dipped near a patch of faded brush. Joe pointed to a half-moon mark in the dust, only partly intact. Just above it, another. Clawed. Smaller than a lion, bigger than a jackal. The edges were blurred, made during the night, maybe early morning. They circled the clearing without crossing into it. Something had been here. Something had approached and backed away, and more than once. The prints weren't fresh enough to follow. The wind had softened them. But there were too many to ignore. At least 2 individuals, maybe 3. The pattern suggested hesitation. Coming close, then retreating. Joe moved further along the arc and crouched near another grouping. These were fainter, almost gone, but one pressed deeper at the heel. A pause, maybe. A lookout. A waiting point. Back near the center, the pup stirred. Its head lifted slowly, ears tipping forward. It didn't move its body. Just watched. The slight tension in its shoulders was unmistakable. Not alertness, not fear. Recognition. Elias stopped walking. The pup's nose twitched once, then again. It didn't look toward the rangers. It looked past them, toward the trees beyond the vehicle. "He's not waiting for us," Elias said. "He thinks someone's coming back." The prince confirmed it. Something had been here during the night. Something that hadn't harmed them, hadn't chased, hadn't scavenged, just circled, observed. The older body hadn't been torn or disturbed. The pup hadn't been dragged or injured. That kind of restraint didn't come from instinct. It came from connection. Joe's voice was low. "Family?" "Possibly," Elias answered. "Or packmates. If this was a feral litter, there might be others still out there." They returned slowly to the vehicle. The clearing remained still. The pup had not shifted from its watch. It blinked once, then lowered its head again. Not in defeat, but in patience. The kind of patience that comes from memory. Waiting not for rescue, but for someone known. Elias set a small bundle of meat pieces near the water dish. Still no sudden moves, no approach. But the scent would linger. If the pup rose again, it would have options. If not, they would try at dusk. From the edge of the brush, the wind carried the faintest scent, musk, grass, and something warm. Animals. Alive. It was gone within seconds, but Elias saw the pup's ear twitch again. The head lifted, its nose stretched into the air. Breath caught, then settled. Whatever had passed here had not come back, but it had left a trace, and the pup, bone-thin, grieving, too weak to stand, still believed that trace might lead somewhere. The light began to fall unevenly across the clearing, long shadows pulling from the base of each thorn bush. The pup had not moved since midday. Its body now lay flat, belly pressed to dirt, eyes half-lidded in the slow heat of late afternoon. Breath still came, shallow and regular, but its limbs remained tucked and still. The sibling's body beside it had begun to sink further into the soil, its scent softening into the ground. The quiet had stretched for hours. Nothing stirred. Then, just before the edge of dusk, a movement came from the far brush. At first it was only a shift of leaves, too small to draw the ranger's attention. But Joe's eyes caught it. A shape low to the earth, moving slowly, carefully, and without the sharp intent of a predator. Elias raised a hand, stilling the group. No one spoke. The shape emerged in full as it crossed into the low light. A dog, lean and older, its ribs visible beneath a coat of dull gold. One ear hung, torn and curled inward. Its gait was uneven, the right foreleg bearing less weight than the rest. But it moved with purpose, slow and deliberate, eyes fixed on the two forms in the center of the clearing. The pup did not react. Not at first. Its eyes remained on the ground, unfocused. But then, a lift of the head, barely perceptible, a widening of the nostrils. The scent had reached him. The older dog approached without sound. 10 steps, then 5, then 2. It paused inches from the body of the dead sibling, standing in complete stillness. Its chest moved with deep, controlled breaths. Its eyes never left the small figure beside the body. The pup did not retreat, did not flinch. It only looked up. For a long moment, neither moved. The clearing was silent. The sun slipped lower behind the far ridge. Wind passed softly through the dry grass, brushing both bodies. And still they remained. One barely standing. One barely alive, the air between them tight with meaning that humans could only guess. Joe's voice was low, near inaudible. "That's no stranger." The older dog lowered its head slowly, nostrils hovering just above the lifeless pup. It lingered there, scenting deeply, pausing at the back of the neck, then the chest, then the legs. The movements were not rushed, not panicking. They were full of understanding. A kind of farewell. Then it shifted, not away from the body, but toward the pup, still breathing. It stepped close enough that their muzzles almost touched. The pup's ears stayed folded, but it did not pull away. Instead, it blinked once, long and slow, and placed its head on its paws again. The older dog remained standing, eyes steady, body relaxed but alert. For a full minute they held that space, unmoving, unspeaking. A quiet reunion not built on joy or excitement, but something heavier, a weight shared. Elias exhaled slowly, the smallest whisper escaping him. She found him. The rest of the group did not move. Any sound now would break whatever fragile thing held between them. And so they waited, dusk settling around them, the last light resting on two figures caught in a moment too deep for human naming. The clearing fell into full quiet as dusk deepened. Light no longer reached the center. Only a faint silver glow along the ridges marked the shape of the older dog still standing beside the pup. No sound came from either. Even the breeze had stilled. The trees beyond the clearing blurred into dark silhouettes, and the earth, now cooling, held the scent of dust, dry fur, and something softer. Something like recognition. After several long minutes, the older dog shifted. Her front legs bent, slow and deliberate, body lowering to the ground beside the lifeless sibling. There was no hesitation, no glance toward the humans watching. She rested fully now, curling slightly around the two bodies. Her side touched the edge of the pup's hip. She made no sound. Then, with a movement so subtle it might have gone unnoticed, she placed her muzzle gently over the dead pup's back. Not forceful, not possessive. Only a resting weight, a simple contact that meant, "I see you, I knew you, you are still part of us?" The younger pup remained still at first. Its eyes were closed or perhaps only too tired to open. Breath came in shallow pulls, spaced wider than before. Then it stirred, a shift of one paw, a small twitch of the shoulder. Its head lifted slowly, trembled midair, and then dropped. Not back to the ground, but forward, toward her. It did not cry. It did not lick or whimper. It simply moved closer, inch by inch, until its face pressed into the soft fur just beneath her neck. She did not react, only stayed still. Her breathing was steady, slow. The pup adjusted once more, curling tighter, its spine flush against her chest. Then it went still. The rangers remained in their place beyond the scrub, silent. Elias had crouched beside the tire of the vehicle, eyes locked on the pair. Joe leaned forward slightly, one hand braced on the dry grass. Neither said a word. The moment did not invite language. It asked only for stillness. Elias exhaled, soft enough not to disturb anything. "That's the mother." Joe didn't answer, but the truth was already settled. This was not a passing stray. This was not a scavenger. She had been here. She had searched. She had circled the clearing in the night, unsure whether to approach. And now, with the air cooler and her scent known, she had come back to do what only she could do. The older dog shifted slightly, tucking one leg under her chest. The pup made no move to break contact. Her head stayed low, angled toward both of them, her body forming a quiet shelter. No sound, no growl, no claim, just a presence. If they moved now, it could be shattered. If they called out, even in kindness, the fragile peace might rupture. So the rangers waited, letting the reunion unfold without intervention. Because what was happening here, between loss and survival, between a mother and the child she hadn't yet given up on, needed no help. And if anything was going to change the pup's fate now, it would not be food. It would not be water. It would be this. The return of something known, something safe. She did not sleep. She only stayed, a quiet shape beside her living and her dead, holding both in place as the night deepened. At first light, the clearing remained still. A pale mist clung low to the soil, rising from where the heat had been pressed deep the day before. The older dog had not moved through the night. She remained curled beside the pup, her head resting low, eyes half-lidded but always open. The younger one, now pressed fully against her side, slept without tension for the first time in days. Its breaths came slower, more rhythmic. The lifeless sibling lay inches away, untouched, the early sun catching on the still fur. The rangers emerged quietly from the vehicle. They spoke little, only nodding once to confirm what they had decided hours earlier. The dead pup could not remain exposed. Predators would come. Insects had already started, and the air, though cool now, would not stay that way. Elias carried a short-handled spade. Joe had a folded cloth and a shallow canvas satchel. Neither moved quickly. They approached in a wide arc. The older dog lifted her head. Her body tensed, but she did not growl. She did not rise. She only watched. The younger pup stirred but did not rouse. Its limbs shifted slightly in its sleep, adjusting to the warmth it now trusted. Elias crouched a few meters from them, choosing a patch of earth where the ground sloped gently beneath a stand of dry brush. He pressed the spade into the soil, the dull sound breaking the quiet like a breath. The older dog did not move. Joe came beside him, laying down the cloth. One slow motion after another. No rush, no noise. The digging took time. The earth here was light but tangled with old rootlets and stone. Each shovel pull was deliberate. Each pause is respectful. The hole was shallow, enough to shelter, not to forget. As they worked, the older dog turned her gaze away, eyes settling on the horizon. She blinked, once, slowly. When the hole was ready, Elias stepped to the body. He did not lift it by the scruff or tail. He knelt and slid his hands gently beneath the rib cage and hind legs, gathering the limp weight close as if it could still feel the way it was held. The fur was cold. The limbs no longer folded. But the form was small, and it fit easily into his arms. The younger pup opened its eyes briefly but did not move. The older dog followed Elias with her eyes only, watching as he placed the body into the earth and stepped back. Joe knelt beside the opening and spread the cloth over the small frame, tucking the edges beneath the sides. Then the earth came back, soft, slow, gathered by hand for the final layer. There was no marker, only the shift in the ground, only the memory of the shape. As the last handful of soil settled, the older dog stood. Her legs moved stiffly from the long hours of stillness, but her body was sure. She stepped forward, crossing the space without sound, and sniffed once at the place where the body had been. Then she lowered her head, not to the earth, but toward Elias. Her eyes met his for the briefest second. Not a challenge, not thanks, just understanding. She turned back, returned to the pup, and curled beside it once more. Elias stood, brushing his hands clean. The breeze stirred the grass. The clearing, now changed, settled into stillness again. What had been carried here in grief had now been given to the soil. Under the first gold light of morning, the grass near the edge of the clearing stirred gently. The air held the quiet scent of earth turned by hand, sun-warmed metal, and something older. The faint trace of fur, of salt, of presence now gone. The mound where the pup had been buried showed no disturbance. The soil had settled. The loose dust hardened slightly with night dew. A few flies hovered in the air nearby, but nothing lingered long. The scent of death had faded. What remained was memory. Nothing else. No sign of the two dogs had returned overnight. The rangers had kept their distance, watching the tree line in silence as dusk fell and shadows bled into the ground. Now, as the new day unfolded, Elias approached the clearing once more. His steps were slow, deliberate. He did not expect them to return. He only came to see if anything had changed. In his hand was a simple offering, a cloth pouch with a few strips of dried meat and 2 flat biscuits soaked in broth. Not bait. Not a trap. Just something left with respect. He set it beside the burial site, not on top of it, but a few feet away, where the ground dipped into a natural hollow. Then he stepped back and stood with hands open at his sides, eyes low. Nothing moved, no sound came. Behind him, Joe remained by the vehicle. "They're gone," he said softly. "She took him where she knew he'd live." Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Some truth sat better in silence. Still, they waited a while longer. Just in case. The food remained untouched by sunset, but by morning it was gone. Not scattered, not chewed and left behind, gone clean. No tracks were visible in the hardened soil. No fur clung to the grass. But Elias knew. Something had come in the dark, quiet and careful, taking only what was needed. The next day, he left a fresh pouch, not meat this time, but soaked grains and 2 slices of boiled egg. Again, he returned at dawn. Again, it was gone. And this time, faint lines marked the earth, not paw prints exactly, just smudges, light and even, as if something had crouched low while eating. No scratch marks, no drag, just patience. It continued like that for 3 more days. Each morning, food was left. Each night, it disappeared. On the 4th morning, the pouch remained untouched. But beside the burial site, new marks appeared. Not deep, not deliberate, but unmistakable. A circle of disturbed earth where 2 sets of paws had pressed down. Close together, one set larger, more spaced, the other light, close set, both still. Joe stood over the prints with Elias. "They came back," he said, "not for food." "No," Elias replied. "They came to remember." That evening, no pouch was placed. The clearing belonged to them now. The final morning broke warm, windless. No sign of the dogs remained. The burial site looked unchanged, but the rangers knew it would not be visited again. What had needed saying, what had needed feeling, had already been shared in silence, in scent, in stillness. As the sun lifted over the ridge, Elias turned once more toward the tall grass. The blades swayed in slow, even waves. Somewhere far beyond sight, 2 shapes moved together through scrub and shadow. One larger, one smaller. No longer calling, no longer waiting, just walking. Away from loss, toward whatever came next. And behind them, a mound of earth softened by time, and a memory held in the quiet choice to return, not for help, not for rescue, but for goodbye. By the time the sky lifted into its palest blue, the clearing had taken on the stillness of something returned to quiet purpose. The mound where the small body rested no longer stood stark against the earth. Rain had not come, but wind had softened its edges, and the sun had pressed it flat. There was no cross, no name. Just a low rise in the dirt beneath the brush where 2 pups had once lain. One curled into grief, the other already beyond it. Elias stepped into the clearing just after sunrise. In his hands he carried a smooth, round stone, pale granite heavy enough to mark, not so large it would stand out. He walked without noise, his boots brushing the low grass, each step deliberate. Behind him, Joe carried the same pouch of food they'd used before. A few slices of cooked meat, soft bread soaked in broth, nothing strong enough to draw the wrong animals, just enough to mean something. They reached the burial spot and stopped. Neither spoke. Joe knelt and placed the food beside the mound, tucking the pouch into a small hollow at its edge where the wind wouldn't catch it. Elias leaned down, pressed the stone into the earth near the head of the grave, and adjusted it until it sat level. No inscription, just presence, just weight. The kind that says, "This mattered." For the rest of the day, the clearing remained untouched. The food sat where it had been placed, and the stone held its place in the soil. The dogs did not return. Or, if they did, they left no trace. The rangers waited at a distance, checking once at midday and again at dusk. Still untouched, still silent. But the next morning, it was gone. The pouch, the meat, the bread, nothing remained. No drag marks, no torn cloth, just an absence so clean it could only have come from careful mouths and quiet movements. Elias knelt beside the stone and brushed his hand along the soil. It was undisturbed, no prints, no fur, but it was gone. The next day they left another. Again it vanished before dawn, and again on the third. Only on the fourth morning did the ground show anything new. 2 sets of prints, faint but present, pressed side by side near the stone, one large, one smaller. The pads were dry, the claws faint. There was no evidence of digging, no sign of chewing, just the prints, resting in the morning shadow, then continuing eastward toward the tree line. They hadn't come to eat, they had come back to remember. Joe crouched beside them, squinting at the shapes. "That's her," he said. "And the pup. Walking together." Elias nodded. No circling, no scenting. They knew where to go. The marks trailed off within a few feet. The wind had already started to sweep them back into the dust. By mid-morning, they would be gone. The food pouches stopped after that. The dogs did not return, but the stone remained, not as a grave marker, not as a warning, but as a placeholder for something no longer visible, a bond formed in suffering, a quiet reunion, a final choice to come back, if only once, to stand in the place where love had held on. The clearing faded back into grassland. The mound sank. The stone gathered dust. But sometimes, when the air was still, the rangers said the silence there felt fuller than other places. Not empty, but remembered. And if anything came back, it came without sound, without trial. Only breath, only presence, only that invisible thread between the living and what they had lost.